And welcome everyone today for our IORGcast number 2, right? We have already 2 of this new way how IORG is actually sharing very good information, hints and tips, and solution how to reduce information overload and make sure that we all work more productively and we live also a kind of healthier life, also mentally, I would say. And today we talk about particularly email, right? That is the main source of communication for all of us. And with us, we have 2 of the steering member of the IORG. So we will start from Mark Powell. So Mark, in this, he's a researcher in IORG, and he works in email logic. So he's been for decades, I would say, talking about how to improve the email culture and to have a kind of etiquette and to improve the productivity at the same time with email. And also we have Monica, that is so known as well as email doctor, right? So she's healing sick patients that are not using proper email. So anything I didn't share about you? So tell us more about what you're doing and and some of your experience.
Well, over the last 19 years, I think my organization's worked with probably over 700 different businesses, changing the way that emails are used, changing individuals' behaviors, changing the culture, helping people save time, be more productive, improve their well-being, reduce their stress. And as you say, it's the main way we communicate. So it's really important to have this focus and to get people doing what really are all common sense things, really, but not common practice. So that's what I've been doing. Yeah.
What about you, Monica?
Okay, I'm very, very similar. I don't have the grey hairs to show. I've been at this just fractionally longer than Mark, because I think that email misuse, which is what I see an awful lot of, is the biggest drain on organizational and individuals' productivity and well-being. Like Mark, I've worked with hundreds of different organizations, from large to small, different people in the organizations. I do a lot of coaching with senior executives who just feel they don't want to sit in on a workshop. I've also written 3 books on the subject. Probably the 2 bestsellers are Brilliant Email, and I have a very big following in the world of PAs and EAs. So I've written one dedicated to them called Taking Control of Your Inbox.
We can share below in the description of this video that you will find the links of those books as well and all the information.
And the Time, I've written for a long time, used to write for the Times. I've got a blog on Huffington Post, the Financial Times, the BBC, if there's something they want some information on. And done quite a bit of research. I'm quite interested in the gender differences, I think are very interesting. And also, where is email going? It's a bit like pen and paper. We've been talking for the last 10 years. The email's going to go away and be replaced. And
but it's still there. Yeah.
Yes. So that's the main things about me.
So you share something quite interesting. You both like I understood that it's not email doesn't have any problem as a tool. It's not a bad tool or something that it was badly created. But the problem is in how we use it, right? So it's the way how humans are interacting with this tool and then sharing. So and one of the main complaints I hear with email is that there are many of them, right? And then there are constantly coming, so that are a kind of a cause of, when you're focusing on doing your job, you get distracted because something else is coming in, right? So how do you think should be the best way to deal with that?
Well, what we always suggest is ask yourself firstly, does your job mean you have to respond to emails immediately? Now, in any organization, there are a very few numbers of people who have a role that mean they have to respond to emails immediately. So if you don't have to respond to immediately, then switch off your alerts, switch off the audible alerts, switch off the visual alerts, because every time you get disturbed by an email, you are distracted. And that takes time for you to get refocused. This is all well documented, it's well researched. Human beings are not wired to multitask, no matter what you might think. So switch it off and then set aside email times. The world will not fall apart if you don't respond to emails in the next few seconds. You can leave it maybe half an hour or an hour, unless you have a specific type of role. So that's the main point we say, switch it off. If it doesn't work for you, you can always switch it on again. Yeah, the other thing about email is it's proven to be addictive. People are addicted to their email. You will probably be addicted to your email if you're listening to this now. And you should switch it off now. And don't check your emails
so stop
now.
the video, switch off your inbox.
And if you hear it go ping and you don't look at it, notice you get a sort of physical sensation. That is a sign of an addiction. You're driven to have a look. We want a little hit of a chemical being released by looking at our email. I think one other thing about email, and I think it's good to mention this at the beginning, is why not use another method of communication? There are lots of businesses, very large businesses, that could switch off email tonight. And you would have many, many other ways that you could communicate through social enterprise systems, through this messaging. So it's important to switch to other methods of communication rather than email, and that will stop you being distracted.
But for switching off, I understand. So that means just, if you have your software open, just close it and open it from time to time during the day. Monica, do you agree? What do you have to say about this?
Oh, absolutely. I think Mark and I probably are the two leading exponents in Europe, I would say, if not around the world. So we have very similar things to say. The addiction, I think, is very interesting. It's very hard to treat because it's not like substance addiction. So people have to, where there's a drug and where you can go into a clinic. So you have to really work very, very hard. So I work with people to think about just stretching the time that you leave the inbox off from, say, 5 minutes to 10 minutes to half an hour. And a lot of clients say to me when they've switched it off and then they just look at it maybe every hour, they suddenly realize they have a whole nother job to do. So I think the other thing I come across a lot, perhaps especially with people who are in the sort of PA, EA role or in some sort of a support role, is to work out who your key contacts are and who you really, really must see an email from. You could have a boss traveling abroad, something's gone wrong. So I tend to suggest for them what they do is write what I call a reverse rule. You can, quite rightly, and I entirely agree with Mark, and it's the very first thing I always say to people, switch off all those new mail notifications. But then if you need to, write a rule that will just indicate when there's an email and we're talking about your sort of number 1 or 2 key contacts. And and people come back to me often and say, gosh, I'm just amazed at how much I get done as well.
And that's often a reason why people don't want to switch it off, is because they don't want to miss those emails from specific people. And that's absolutely right. Just write a rule. You can just work, it's a workaround. So the benefit is you won't be disturbed by all the rubbish, which takes a huge amount of time if you add it up throughout the day. And then times it by 150 people, suddenly it's a huge amount of time. It's taken out the organization.
That's true. All these people that are particularly close to you can really learn another tool or some other sources to get in touch with you if it's really urgent. Otherwise, still on a daily basis or twice a day, you can still check your inbox, right?
Yeah.
I think
it's important also for people to get engaged with the new tools that are there. It's important for organizations to get their people engaged with the new collaboration tools. That's a piece of work we're working on at the moment. Organizations have all these tools, but they find it quite difficult to switch people over. But as an individual, you should make it your business to learn how to use these other tools, like whichever it is whether it's Yammer or LinkedIn or Skype for Business, or any of the other plethora of tools that are available to collaborate and communicate, share information. Learn how to use them. They're all designed to be so easy to use, and they're fantastic, particularly when you're working in project teams, project groups, etc.
I agree. I work with 1 or 2, and I think The other problem is we're talking that's a slightly longer term, and people want a terribly short term fix to the issue, when actually moving away from email for certain things is a longer term and more cultural change. And I think that's a slightly harder part. I don't know about you, Mark. That's the bit people come and they say, "Oh, no, I want a short term fix," and it's longer term. It's a longer term fix to move away from being distracted. I think that's the other challenge.
Yeah. And if we even have an addiction into it, right? That's also something, and the addiction probably is not into the emails as such, it's into the constant checking, right? This idea that there is always something that is coming and we have to see, right?
I have to disagree that I don't think it's a difficult addiction to kick.
Okay.
I used to be a smoker. That was a difficult addiction to kick. But email, you turn it off, and the feedback we've been getting for years from people is once they turn it off, they say, it's changed my life. Yeah. I didn't realize how many times it was interrupting me, and how unimportant a lot of the emails are. Mm-hmm. And also the other thing is people, when you have it on, you sometimes respond immediately, and you then set people's expectations and they expect you to respond immediately. Yeah. Well, that's untenable for most people, because you can't have that expectation.
And no, but that's actually important as well. So the immediate response, right? This is also important to understand the process. So when you respond immediately, it's because it's not necessarily something important, but it can be something as well that you just have a quick answer to it, right? So, and one of the things probably that you two were really sharing and teaching is that it's very important to have a healthy prioritization practice, right? So what do you have to say about it?
I think also there's a model that I use a lot that says, I'm picking up on Mark's theme, your behavior and your attitude and your behavior will influence mine. So if I switch my email off and I don't check it now, I only check it every, say, 45 minutes, hour, I tend to say to people, decide how long, because it depends on your job, whether you're frontline, whether you're further back. Gradually, people then will get used to the fact that, if I need Monica in a hurry, I will find another way to communicate with her. Mm-hmm. Whether that's by phone, whether that's I walk and talk, I'm in the same office, I can go and find her. But going back to what you were saying, Mark, yes, if you constantly are checking, therefore you expect that from me. But if I change my behavior, it influences you to change your behavior. And I think we'll talk about that towards the end, how you influence people, but that's the starting block. And so that cycle, in a way, goes on and on until you are the one. I think one of the big takeaways, people watching this webinar, you think you can't influence anybody. And for sure, you can't influence the whole of the organization. But I think one of the interesting things that you've introduced, Lele, through to IORG, you've changed the way we use email in our behavior. And so one can do that within one small team. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something to think about as a takeaway as well.
That's true. The behavioral change takes a long time, right? But if you have a team and you start having somebody next to you that already learns with your way, then it's easier than to start. You start with people, you don't start with tools. It's more sharing and talking. And it's true that the fact that while you are that's what I experienced in that, trying to not use email, right? Getting out and using other tools. I started seeing that people were replying to me on the other tools, and this had less, incoming in the inbox, because that was not anymore the channel for that kind of communication. So it's all in your hands, let's say, to who is listening.
Yes.
You're living proof of that, Lele.
But getting back to prioritization, right? So how would you prioritize your email? Like who, the people, and what is coming, what you should reply immediately? Is there something we should learn about it?
Do you want me to go, Mark? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I have a very, very simple, because I think it is about keeping things, making it easy for people. Over the next few days, look at the emails as they come in, give them mentally a very simple priority from low, medium to high. And think about with the high priority emails, they may be high, but do I need to see them in my inbox immediately? I liken it a little bit to, imagine emails are sort of, they're like traveling in the on a highway, and do you want them all coming down the fast lane to your inbox? Or do you want to then divert some, and they could be high priority, it could be a newsletter that you do want to see at some point, and use filters to move them out into folders. Because underlying that is your inbox really should be work in hand. In the old days, you'd have had a secretary would filter out, and all you would see in your small folder would be the things that you need to see. And I think we've lost some of that ability. And I also think the ability to prioritize is hard. It's hard mentally, because you've then got to decide, I really need to see this email, or it's medium priority. So again, it doesn't need to travel on the fast lane straight to my inbox. It can go in a folder. And then you have to start, you alluded to volume. Then you've got to start to think about all the stuff that I really don't want to see. And I think then you're into almost a sense people feel insecure. They say, I must see everything. I'll turn it back to Mark to add something.
Well, I'd agree with all of that, and also add that have a look up and down your inbox, see what are things I can deal with or I want to deal with immediately, and just have a one touch, and what are things I want to switch maybe to a folder to leave to a point where I have a longer period of time. But that way you can start clearing out your inbox, and you should aim to keep your inbox as low as you possibly can, really one screen. So things you can deal with immediately, or move them to a pending folder. The other thing I'd just like to mention about prioritization is the importance of subject lines. If you have really good, clear, meaningful subject lines, you can prioritize them much more easily because you don't have to open them. Now, you can't always govern what subject lines other people put on emails, but you can govern what you put on emails. And if you start sending really good subject lines, you'll very quickly start getting them back into your inbox, which will help you prioritize. However, in saying that, if you're working in a team, why not use have some rules about writing subject lines so people can prioritize from their inbox?
So agreeing all together so that then we know what is coming, what is the process, what is the timing, the urgency, and so on. Yeah,
the objective, and just to be really clear, so you know what it's about without having to open it, so you can make that decision about how you want to prioritize it. And obviously, if it is important, if it's urgent, say it. It's not a great medium for urgent communications. However, if it is an urgent communication, maybe you've tried all the other methods, phone or face-to-face if that's appropriate, put it in the email. Don't overuse it.
Is there anyone that has a kind of good practice? You met different clients, different companies, right? That really has a healthy, high priority system, because I don't believe it works. I believe that people start overusing it and start sending everything with high priority at one point.
I've come across companies where they have really good practice, some companies that have worked with us. It does normally involve some training and some agreements and some protocols as well, and then some champions to maintain that. But also it's to do with the culture as well, and creating that culture. What we always say is, email's the main way you communicate. You shouldn't be trying to improve your communication. You should be brilliant at it. It's the main way you communicate, and communication is the key for getting things done.
And Mark is absolutely right. It's about having champions. I think that there are also some organisations and they're in the public domain and I know some smaller organisations who've actually switched off internal email. And I think that's the other factor as well. And it touches on what you were saying, Lelia, looking at what do I really need email for? You won't change how your clients behave, but you can influence them. But you can start by influencing how you work as a team, and how you work as a department, and then how you work as an organisation. And quite a few organisations have been very successful at switching off email for internal communications, unless they need it for auditory purposes. And I think that's a whole separate game. But all the sort of trivial and all the copying in, I think the move towards more collaborative tools is so crucial in this day and age. Whatever tools you choose, and I don't think either Mark or I are in the business of selling them. It's more the principle that they offer a way out of this sort of deluge of 100 emails a day, most of which are trivial.
And when you start talking about CCs and reply to alls, people don't,
oh, sorry, she's been away for a week.
No, but that's true, Mark. I mean, I think that one of the most, the worst of the bad habit is really the using inappropriately the reply to all button or to put people on CC, right? This is completely misused. So,
and I think the big thing there is people don't appreciate how much time it takes out of the organization. So to give you a very easy example, if you send an email to 60 people that takes 60 people 3 minutes each to deal with, you've just taken 3 hours out of the organization. If one person does a reply to all, that's another 3 hours. But if you send it to 60 people, at least 10 will probably do a reply to all. And that could be 10 times 3 hours, which is 30 hours, which is 4 working days. So it's the same as 4 people being in a room for a day dealing with one email. And people don't always realize that every single email you send has a cost, even if people just delete it. You know, I was talking to someone in a big hotel in London recently. It's the learning and development person. And she said, we've got 150 people here using email. I said, how long do you think they spend on average just deleting the rubbish, the things they don't need? She said, probably 10 minutes each. Well, 10 minutes each doesn't sound like a lot, but you multiply it up. 150 people times 10 minutes is 1,500 minutes. 1,500 minutes is 3 people. So they're paying 2% of their staff, 3 people, to come in and just delete the rubbish every day. Which is ordinary. I mean, they're probably not paying as much to get rid of all their rubbish, their real rubbish. And people don't realise that when they're sending CCs in reply to all. So really, you know, it's so important to create a culture where unnecessary CCs in reply to alls are reduced. And one thing is push back on them. Tell people you don't want them politely if you're sent unnecessary traffic. And that's a big cultural shift as well. But one that has to. Would
you recommend like to not send a CC anymore, or what would you do in this case? Like
no, you have to CC people in. So I'm not talking about ones that you need or that you might need. People need, they might need. I'm talking about the CCs that people will never need, or the we're all professionals. We have to make our own judgment. But not it's a viral thing. It often starts at the top of the organization, at senior level, or, sometimes senior manager at some level, who start copying in everyone. And then it becomes viral. Yeah. That's the thing to do because it's easy. And really, you need to reduce it, and everyone needs to be responsible for it. Because effectively, what you're doing is taking time out of people. It's like inviting them to a very short meeting that they don't need to be at. Yeah. You're taking out time. So, and the thing is, it's a meeting with 150 people if you're sending it to 150 people or 60 people or whatever it is. It's only a little amount of time, but it really adds up like a vortex of productivity drain, if you like. And when people are actually sending them and doing the reply to alls, they don't appreciate how much time is wasted. Now, if senior people stop doing it, it has a big impact. And if senior people start encouraging their teams to stop sending the unnecessary CCs. So in answer to your question, absolutely don't stop sending CCs or reply to alls, but just reduce them. So with reply to alls, I personally have a way of working where I default to not doing reply to all unless I can justify it. If I can justify it, I'll do it. 8 out of 10 emails I'm copied in on, maybe 9 out of 10, I don't do a reply to all. I've never had a problem. But I go through that thought process rather than just automatically going with
So thinking before sending is always a healthy practice. Monica, so one thing I see with when you use a CC, for example, is this kind of illusion of control. So I remember several managers I had myself as well, that they asked me, please put me on CC or anything you do, right? Because they wanted to be in the loop of the conversation. So how does it end, this kind of control? Is it really a useful thing, you think, or it's just an illusion?
You said it, and it's very interesting, and I hate to say this in public, but I'm going to say it. You're absolutely right. It's an illusion of control, and I see women quite often asking that more than men. I don't have scientific evidence for it, but there is empirical, yes. Yeah. There is this feeling when I sometimes work with senior executives and senior women. They'll say, well, I go home and I go through my inbox and I'll say, well, what's it? You know, we'll look at it. I have a process of doing an inbox audit. And for me, the inbox is just wallpaper over much deeper problems. And you're absolutely right. It is one of fear. I don't know what's going on. Therefore, I want you to copy me in. And so they'll go home, have dinner, be with the family, and then spend an hour going through an awful lot of this email. And I think that, again, we've talked about it, but it's very important. There are several ways around it. One way round using a lot of CC'd email is to use the BCC box, which is increasingly important with the new GDPR regulations coming in and disclosing to other people things you shouldn't, and email addresses you shouldn't. And what I then suggest to people you can do is put at the bottom of your email. Now, this takes a few minutes, but it's all about me helping to influence you. Say, look, I've sent this email to these people. Is there anybody missing? What you then get are individual comments, but you reduce all the volume of reply all. Mm-hmm. And people can comment and say, well, actually, you missed off Mark, you missed off Lily. I think they need to be part of the discussion. Mm. The other is coming back again for a discursive email or a broadcast. The question is email the right channel?
Yeah.
So I think there are two things going on there. One, and the very important time wasted. I suppose I always say deleting is not an option. Find another way. Don't start deleting, as Mark has highlighted. But you've got the two things going on there. Why am I doing it? Why am I asking to be copied in? Do I feel insecure? And the other is looking at alternative media.
Very good point. So a bit of reflection on the right tool and a bit of reflection on the request you effectively ask to your people or to people around you. And also see on you. Always, I think the best thing of email is that you experience, everybody's experiencing it. So everybody can actually have a little bit of reflection about their own incoming and see what is happening. So we discussed about the subject. We discussed about the way how we should reply, what is the behavior. We discussed about various practice, how, to make sure that we have the right amount of distraction during our day, but we can control it. What about the content of the email? Is there anything to say about how we should write it?
Very simple. Keep it short, keep it clear, be polite, use people's names, put are on the bottom, and make it completely unambiguous. And say what you want and when you want it by. Highlight things that are important, and do the work for them at your end before you send it. Reread it before you send it. Make sure they're going to understand it, rather than just tapping it out, hit return, and it goes off. And they can work it out. Edit down long emails. Don't send people things they don't need. Don't give them things to read that they don't need.
I would concur. I have a sort of 5S structure, most of which Mark has covered, in terms of structure the thing, and the number of emails that I've either put in my draft box because it's too long, or I've rewritten. Mark has said simple, very succinct, make it really easy for the other person to reply. I think a couple that you didn't mention that are crucial, spell check before you hit send, because there's nothing more annoying, I know I've done it, than an email that's poorly got lots of spelling errors, and sending it on your iPhone, iPad, or mobile devices, shall we say, that's no excuse either, because at the end of the day, an email is a picture of you. You as the person, your team, your department, your organization. The other one I would also say is, my fifth S is single topic. If I want to write to somebody about 3 different things, I am better saying email 1 of 3. Here's the first one, because you might not be able to answer it there and then. Here's the second one, because it's maybe a 2-minute answer. And by the way, here's the third one, because it might be a financial email that can be forwarded to somebody else without disclosing all the other bits and pieces. And that way they get dealt with much more easily. We talked about the subject line as well. I try to avoid, or people should avoid, high priority markers are somehow in your face and really a bit rude, but in the subject line to put urgent, action by, that's just drawing it to your attention. And I think the other one, in terms of length, you said it, I have a lovely one. Think 5s, maximum 5 paragraphs, preferably 5 sentences only, or 5 questions, because after that you've lost me.
It's like 1 minute reading, no more, let's say, right? That's
People do have a shorter span of attention when they're reading emails. They do. It's proven.
Yes.
In research. I think it was conducted by Xerox some time ago. The other one I'd add is be polite.
Yes.
Emails can really impact your relationships, just because people sometimes come across as quite abrupt or quite rude. They don't always mean to, but it can impact your relationship, and you can also really have an impact on the amount of trust people trust you. Trust is really important, and you can lose trust very easily through the way that you write your emails. Please is a great word. It's 6 letters. It doesn't take long to write, and it can completely transform the colour of an email. I don't mean you have to be gushing, but just be polite. Someone once said, a leading US psychologist once said, there's no real difference in value between an email communication and any other type of communication. What's the difference? You're still communicating. In fact, it's the main way that you communicate. So it'll probably pay to just be courteous and polite.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. There's none of us are so short of time that we can't afford to just put a simple greeting, even if it's just hi, the person's name, and some sort of sign off at the bottom that says, thanks for your help. Just being careful with how you say thanks. Again, making sure it's not sort of sarcastic.
And also that it's not built into your signature. Your sign off is not built into your signature, like kind regards or thanks or whatever you put, and then your name, because often that's a different format. It's a slightly different font to your message, and people will know it's auto-generated, and they'll think you couldn't even be bothered just to sign your name at the bottom. Some of them will, not all.
The important thing of a thank you is that you spend time to write it, right? Because
exactly.
It's not an automated thing. If you ask somebody, please thank that other one, it has less effect than if you pick up the phone and did the thank you, right? So
it's sort of, I suppose it would be the equivalent of getting a thank you from an automatic telephone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So politeness is also, I would say, important also in how you are engaging people in the mail. For one of the practice I never found productive is when you have a long email, assuming even if you have a short email, but you have a call to action at the end of it for somebody that maybe is on CC, right? So like connecting all the things, you say, you directed this mail to Mark, but then I have at Monica, please do this stuff. And this is not polite as well, because Monica maybe was not supposed to get that mail. She was just on CC. She might overlook it. And at the same time, you might miss the action, and you might be, I don't know, even angry with Monica at one point. You didn't do that, right? But how did you communicate it? So think about this, I would say, before sending.
Absolutely.
I think as well, there's one of the other things is the to and the CC box. One has to go back to their origins. So to is to me, I must action it. So if you want Mark and myself to action it, we both should be in there, as you rightly say, with some kind of line in the email identifying which one of us does something. Mm-hmm. But technically, if you're in the CC box, there's actually no call to action. And indeed, a lot of people do filter out their email. They have a rule that sends all their CC'd email on the basis it's for information only. So I think that's where things go wrong as well. Especially if I look at the boss-PA relationship sometimes, PAs will say to me, but I have to look at all the CC'd email because somewhere buried in there is an action. So again, it's getting people, if you miss something, it's, I think Mark said earlier quite rightly, pushing back for a minute and saying, well, can you put me in the to box next time?
Okay. And that is one of the most important things to do. I would say, the final point I would say before closing and wrapping up is, this is not enough if you only do it. You should potentially share it, right? So get into the team, get into your people, and share this webinar perhaps, or what else would you do, Mark?
Well, I always say email is the main way you communicate. So you need to communicate about the main way you communicate. You need to be brilliant at it, not try. So talk to your team, talk to your colleagues, talk to your managers, talk to your anyone that you work with regularly about how to best use email. And maybe just choose one thing, but create a culture of continuous improvement. Good email practice is not difficult. It's easy. It's common sense. But it takes some agreement, and it takes some work, and it takes some communication. So talk to people, and it's not something that you just do once. It's something that has to be ongoing. Many people watching this will be in large organizations, maybe international organizations, and we get into the cross-cultural communication piece. But talk to people that you communicate with regularly. Ask them what's working, what's not working, what can we do to improve, what do you find really frustrating? Yeah.
Monica, any final remark from you as well?
I would add, I just concur with what Mark is saying. You could, if you're in a team, once you've agreed some guidelines, have some fun with it. If somebody breaks one of those guidelines, they get fined. Maybe have some sort of prize for excellence at the end of the week or something. I've seen things like that done. Make it fun. But again, what Mark has said, and if you are listening to this as an individual, ask yourself, when was the last time I talked to members of my team? Probably never. And so now's the time to start.
I think it has to be done in a spirit of improvement, not in a spirit of blame or upset. Do it before that happens. Just constructively give feedback on poor email use with the intent of improving.
It's going to be good for all the people that these other people will get in touch to. So it's anyway a very good action for the whole community. Yeah. Clients included. And
actually, if they want help to how to do it and want some training, they can get in touch with us.
Of course, and read more in the IORG webpage, right? That there are all the information below, and look at any of the information we have to share that are always. And if you have any particular question, of course, post in the comment below. We will also make in the next maybe IORGcast and so on. We will address that. So thank you a lot, Monica, and thank you a lot, Mark, for sharing today. I think we have countless very high good tips about emails and how to deal with that and make it better. For all of you, please share and enjoy, and see you with the next IORGcast still on this channel, so that you can subscribe and reshare as well. Thank you.